impending disaster that he gives tremendous importance to prayer. He tells her how St. Philip was transported 1,000 kilometers by the angels. Similar things will happen to us, things that will astound us and that we will find very difficult to explain. He is then asked about Planet X. He says this monster from space will move all of the continents as if they were sponges. It's his opinion that Planet X is the punishment spoken of in Garavandal. This will be further out in the timeline, so he will deal with this in a later video. He says that the intelligence sources that contact him said that the many thousands of children now being born of vaccinated mothers are not human. They are what he calls hominoids. He said all the vaccinated are now undergoing biological changes, personality and character transformations. All the vaccinated are going through this. He says we haven't the slightest idea of the horror that will befall humanity. A Mexican woman then asks him if the Pacific or the Atlantic side of Mexico will be most devastated. He tells her that every coastal city in every country of the world will disappear under the water. Every city in every country of the world that has a coastline. Pick any city you like. All of them will disappear under the water, without exception. What I'm saying is hard to take, but you must tell others, and very hard decisions will have to be taken because of this information. You need to get out of the city. If you can't buy a property in the country, rent one. Remember, with the blackout, all debts will be cancelled because the entire financial system is going to collapse, and only the vaccinated will be able to recover their money later. When the blackout is over and the chaos subsides, the vaccinated will recover their money. The unvaccinated will not get anything. Therefore, we must take out our money out of the banks now before this blackout starts. But it's not a good idea, of course, to take it all out in one go, but rather gradually do so. The impact of the asteroid on the oceans will break the underwater tectonic plate. Remember, this asteroid is 7 kilometers in diameter and has a speed of between 50 and 60,000 kilometers per hour. So what will be the reaction when it hits the sea? All the underwater and the land-based volcanoes will erupt, and we will be facing a nuclear winter as the entire sky goes black with the stuff that will be thrown up out of the volcanoes. So what does this mean? It means that places like Costa Rica, with an average temperature of 28 to 30 degrees, will be facing temperatures of 12 degrees below zero. And people are going to die of cold. It will be like this for months. Countries in Europe will have temperatures of between 50 and 60 degrees below zero. So who will be able to take that level of cold? Many people will die. These horrific temperatures will last for months. The cold will be horrendous and frightening. The impacting asteroids in the Atlantic and Pacific will cause Yellowstone, which has a mouth of 300 kilometers, to erupt, killing all life right down to the Mississippi Basin. Because of the immensity of the Pacific, all the coasts of China, Indonesia, Australia, the United States, all the coasts of South America, Colombia, Costa Rica, Panama, Guatemala, Nicaragua, Mexico, Peru, Chile, with a coast of 6,000 kilometers on its own, all of these places will be completely razed and devastated. These waves will reach 10,000 meters high at times. This will happen especially in the US, as it has a gradual continental shelf. France has a continental shelf of only 200 meters, resulting in 50% of France going underwater. The same will happen in Germany, Poland, Russia, which is also very low. and will suffer, and it will also suffer a similar fate. He says the angels will help the believers, not during the impact of the asteroid, but during World War III, when the Russians, Chinese and Muslims invade Europe. The war itself will last about 3 weeks, but the invading forces will be here for 3, 4 or 5 months, and you can't imagine the massacre and the brutal savagery that they will inflict on Christian people. Remember that the Russians and the Chinese are all communists. He says that the island of La Palma will collapse into the sea, causing waves of 600 meters on the whole east coast of the United States. The Russians have already evacuated their diplomats from Morocco, because they know something that we don't know. World War III will not affect Central and South America, but the consequence of this nuclear war, a terrible global famine, will. When asked what role Spain will play in all this, he says, "The faith in Spain is already totally destroyed. Spain is finished, it's destroyed. The elite had Spain in its crosshairs and they have totally destroyed it. In the next 3 years, Spain will go from a population of 49 million people down to 18 million people." He is then asked about the role of the Vatican in all this. He says we should forget about the Vatican because it is now the center of a pagan, ecological and ecumenical religion. The Vatican is the biggest center, he says, of Satanism in the world. In the last 80 years, the physical structures of the church have been infiltrated by seminarians who were mostly homosexuals and members of the Communist Party, or else they were criminals. In the priesthood now you find all types of people, including criminals. In these last 80 years, thousands and thousands of these seminarians have infiltrated the church and been legally ordained, but they are not really true priests. They have permeated the physical structures of the church, such as seminaries, convents, monasteries, parishes, bishoprics, etc., and worked their way up to the ecclesiastical ladder to reach the highest level. The result is that we now have a false church which goes unnoticed by the ordinary man and woman in the street. Because of this, we are now in 2021 and find that the church is totally controlled by ecclesiastical Freemasonry. Francis, by the way, is not the result of chance. Francis has been prepared to rise in the church, to assume power and to destroy the church. It's as simple as that. This is not the result of chance. This is the result of many years of work. They do a coup d'etat on Benedict and they throw him out, saying either you go or we'll kill you. Make no mistake about it, Francis's mission was to destroy and to smash the church to pieces, and that objective has been achieved. All that remains now is for a huge scandal to come out of Rome shortly that will sink the church. 2 months ago, Francis eliminated the traditional Latin Mass, and this will precede the elimination of the Eucharist. I think this could happen in December or January, but I don't think it will go beyond April. By the next blood moon in May, the church will have suppressed the Eucharist. He then says they will release a terrifyingly lethal virus in January or February of 2022. People will die in the streets. You will see a lot of corpses in the streets that nobody will remove. He doesn't know the name of it, but he says it's very like Ebola. People will bleed through their eyes, their nose, their mouth and their ears. This will happen before the war, and people will die within hours. He thinks it will be transmitted through the air. It is also tremendously contagious. He says 90% of the vaccinated will die in the next 2 years. There is no way out of this. Whoever has taken 2 vaccines has no hope whatsoever. The virus that is coming in January or February has no cure. It might be worthwhile, though, to keep an eye on Marian websites to see if some plant or other is recommended later on. In the next month or two, that is November, December, Pfizer will distribute a tablet free of charge. This is very important. He warns everybody, warns them very severely, that anybody who takes this tablet will die in excruciating death. Pfizer will tell you that it's an anti-COVID pill. He says it's important that we realize that during the blackout they will poison the water supply of large cities as well. In some cities, nobody will be left alive. He thinks this will happen in cities with a population greater than 100,000 people. And boiling the water, by the way, won't solve the problem, because the poison will still remain there. This is why I say that what is coming is much worse than what you can ever imagine. And it's even much worse than what I thought it would be myself. This extermination is being directed personally by Lucifer, who is guiding the world elite. He says those who govern the world are non-human entities. He suspects also that because of a war to the death between these people at the top, Satan had to personally assume control of everything. He says the acceleration of events, which is now very fast, makes him suspect this. These events should be happening, he says, in 2026 and not in 2021. This acceleration of events is not normal. It should have been a more gradual process, he thinks. This is why he suspects there has been a war between the global elite, causing events to accelerate. After the blackout, World War III and the asteroid, will come events that are even worse. Finally, all the global elite who will take refuge in state-of-the-art underground cities and bunkers will all be drowned and crushed to death. Their bunkers will be their tombs.